Hi everyone, I'm Pastor Penn Clark. Welcome to this study course on stress, how to manage stress in a biblical way. And I've entitled it, What Did Jesus Say? What Jesus said about stress, because he dealt with it a lot. He taught on a lot. I'm surprised at how much he spoke about stress. If you do a word study on that word stress in the King James Version or any authorized version, you probably won't find it. But it's hidden in the word tribulation. And tribulation was one of those words I just didn't like. I'm not a big end time guy, a big end time theologian in any way. It's just not my cup of tea. But he said, you'll have tribulation in the world. He said it just a matter of fact. And I found that to be true. And the word tribulation has to do with pressure. And tribulation, trials, trouble, those three T words all have to do with stress and pressure. And so as I studied what Jesus said about tribulation, it opened up so much in the Bible for me to help me to understand how stress happens. And to realize, I think one of the most important things is to realize that it's an inevitable. And Jesus said, in the world you'll have tribulation, but I've overcome the world. But it's just a matter of fact. It's not a reflection on how spiritual you are, how good you are, how godly you are. Tribulation happens. It's stress happens. It happened to Jesus. That was a big relief. I thought that maybe because I have so much stress that there's something wrong in my spiritual life. But stress is a fact of life. But it's not something we just lay down and let run over us. It's something that we have to manage. We have to get a handle on. We have to figure out ways to offset it in our lives. And Jesus gave clues to that as well. And the Apostle Paul, of course, had lots of stress, lots of pressure in his life. And so he wrote about it. He spoke about it different times. And so I wanted to study this out. I think the big motivation for me was this whole COVID thing, because it just put so much pressure on people and was such a confusing, disconcerting experience, and especially in the early days of the initial lockdown, before it became so politicized, and the media was using it, as they always do, to get ratings. They're using it to incite fear, confusion. That's their go-to. And but I'm a pastor, and so our people were going through something that none of us had been through before. And Jesus would wake me up faithfully in the night and begin to speak to me and lead me and give me ideas, creative ideas, and open up scriptures that I'd never thought of before. I'd never thought about in this light. It's like whole parts of the Bible were becoming new to me. And I realized it was all to help our people to deal with stress and to keep us from succumbing to the pressures that would eventually hurt our health or hurt our marriages or create emotional upheaval. And Jesus made a very strong connection, not only with his life, but also with his teaching, between our emotions and our physical well-being. And that's one reason why we need to learn how to manage stress biblically, is it can hurt us, and it can hurt our marriages, and it can hurt our spiritual lives. There's one time he's talking about the weeds that choke out the growth, and in there he's talking about three different things that prevent growth, and that's can prevent our spiritual growth, and hidden in there is stress and the pressures of life and the abundance of things. All of that can create stress for us. We can have so much stuff that our lives become empty and become spiritually vacant. And so I began to study and I began to teach, and I taught like another man. I felt like I came alive. I felt like I had a purpose in my preaching that I hadn't had before. I really wanted people to get these messages. And so out of that came this book on stress, and some beautiful insights that just really helped us. For example, The Apostle John was also quarantined, you could say. He was in a lockdown on Patmos. He was sequestered by the government in the same way that we were. And for some of the same reasons, I believe, that they wanted to limit his influence, and they wanted to be the ones in control. And so John's on this island of Patmos, and he's spent some time in prayer, and he got in the Spirit, and the Lord called him up into the heavens, and there he showed him almost like a split screen experience where he could see the wonder of heaven, the worship of heaven, the peace of heaven, the order of heaven, all the things that God was doing, and the things that he was commanding and releasing and allowing or forbidding. And then in the split screen down below, all the chaos and confusion and tribulation that was unleashed, that only increased. As time went on, it was just something that only gained momentum, and one thing led to another. One level of tribulation led to another level of tribulation. It was a split screen experience where you see that God's in control. He's in the heavens, and he has an objective. And the bottom line for all the tribulation was that people would come to know Jesus. People would be saved. And you can see that all the way through the book of Revelation, that the goal was that people would come to know the Lord, and they wouldn't have otherwise. They needed to be shaken free from the pull of this world and the love of other things and the lust of other things. And so tribulation was serving God's purposes. But that split screen experience, I had something of that, not a vision, never got to go to heaven or anything like that, but just this deep sense that God was in control, and that I could find my peace in him, and that this trial, and that's really what it was. James says the way you get through a trial is you rejoice. You calmly worship the Lord. And I can see worship happen in heaven. And you need perspective, a heavenly perspective. Help me. And James said, if any man lacks perspective, let him ask of God, and he will give it to him generously without finding fault. I need a perspective for my people, and to be able to preach. I'm responsible for a lot of people, and I'm a leader. I wanted to lead them into away from what the media was saying, away from what some of our government leaders were saying, and into another reality. And the other reality is a biblical reality, a kingdom reality, that Jesus is our King. And as he led me and inspired me, I was able to get up and Sunday by Sunday and try to inspire our people. And stress is just a factor that we have to deal with. And so I worked on writing this book to help people get a handle on it. And so that's what this course is about. So I want to take some time to teach you about this. And so in this course, down below, is a PDF that you can download, a free book that I wrote on what Jesus had to say about stress. And I want you to get it and study it. You can print it off, put it in a binder, make your own little book about it, and go deep. Go deep in it. And anytime it gives an assignment or a word study that you can do, is something that you can do now, go deep in it. There's quite a section in this book that describes the correlation between what happens to us emotionally and physically when we don't deal with stress properly. And Jesus, for example, said that in the end time there'd be so much tribulation that men's hearts would fail them for fear. And I mean, even our psychiatrists haven't figured that out always, but there's a deep, deep connection between what goes on in us and those emotions, strong emotions like fear, anger, that creates physical problems. And there's all kinds of people in the kingdom, all kinds of people in our churches. Our churches are filled with people with lower back pains and rotator cuffs and headaches and migraines and digestive issues, all kinds of stuff. But it's because they have gone with long periods of unbroken stress, and they've not learned to offload that and manage it. And so I tell experiences of the time that my back used to go out on me all the time, and I felt like the Lord wanted to speak to me. He wanted to tell me how to get rid of this. I'd pray, He'd heal me. I'd pray, He'd heal me. And finally, He just more or less set me down and showed me, through a chiropractor, the connection between the weight of things I was carrying, the responsibilities, and the stress that I was under, and what was going on in my lower back. And so I take quite a bit of time to document that. And I also tell a story of suppressed anger that led to a bad sciatic experience that was eliminated, not through an operation or not through medication, but through forgiveness. And there's a strong connection. Jesus was under so much pressure in Gethsemane that his perspiration turned to blood. Well, that tells me that there's a connection between what's going on in us emotionally. He thought he was going to die right there in the garden. He told the disciples that. And it turned his perspiration into blood. That's pressure. It's the ultimate pressure, perhaps. And so I want you to get a handle on this. I want you to be able to study it biblically. And you don't need a degree. You need an experience. Just take your experience. Take your own bad back. Take your own pressure. Take your own anger. Trace it back to the pressure that you're under, the stress you're under. For example, I met this couple, and they were having a really hard time, and it had robbed them of their spiritual life, and they were under tremendous stress, robbing them of their sleep, hurting their health. And so as they told me their problems, we met in a restaurant. I just took napkins from the dispenser, and I wrote out everything that they said, all the issues. And they told me one problem after another, and I just wrote it on one napkin after another. Soon the whole table was covered with these napkins. And so we began one by one dealing with each one. Well, what can we do to fix this? Well, that's manageable. That's fixable. We can deal with that tomorrow. Okay, well, let's deal with that one. And so we set that aside. Ended up we got it down to 2 or 3 napkins that were so big that we needed a miracle. We needed to wait on God and ask God and believe God, but it was manageable. And so that's what they did. But it was the first time they could see, laid out in front of them, all the stuff that they're carrying. The average person might have had 2 or 3 napkins on the table. They had a whole table full of napkins. I would say that for you. I would say sit down, itemize it, write it out, get it out where you can see it. I do this almost every week. I'll take my journal, I'll write out all the things I'm carrying, all the things I'm dealing with, all the things I need to offload, the solutions I need, and I'll just get it out on paper, thinking on paper. It clears my head. And so start there and believe the Lord. Trust the Lord with every piece of it. Believe in Him. Say, Lord, this is a weight. I can't carry this. This is hurting me. And then turn that over, roll that over onto the Lord, because He cares for you. Nobody cares for you like Jesus. And so it's important that you take time to really lay your concerns, your responsibilities into His big hands and trust Him with it. Peter wrote that in 1 Peter chapter 5. He was writing to pastors, to elders, he said. They're pastors of that day. And because they carry a big responsibility. And he told them how to offload it. He told them how to cast their cares. And so in the book I described that. As kids, we're taught, our kids, maybe I wasn't taught this, but our children were taught to stop, drop, and roll. And if there's a house fire, and so they learned that in school. And I think that's good advice for carrying stress. Is this: you need to stop. You need to drop. You need to roll your cares upon the Lord, because He cares for you. If you care about it, He cares about it. If you're carrying it, He'll carry it. And we need to place these things in His hands and ask Him to see to it. Ask Him to look after it. And He'll show you that He's Jehovah Jireh today, just like He was in the life of Abraham, that He'll look after it. He'll take care of it. He won't forget it. He won't neglect it. It won't fall between the cracks. It won't rot on some shelf. He'll look after it in a timely way. You can trust him to do that. Well, I wanted to share this with you. I wanted to make sure you understood what the goal of the course is, and it's written in this little book. I want you to be able to download it here in the next couple of minutes. But may God encourage you. May you find peace and freedom, and then you go and you take it and you share it with other people and help them to get past all their burdens and their cares and anxieties and worries and fears and stresses. And I hope this happens. I hope you share it. There's something about deciding on the front end that anything he teaches you, you'll teach other people. Anything he shares with you that sets you free, you'll use now as a tool to set other people free. That mindset is like turning on grace. It turns on the tap. It opens the spigot. Next thing you know, grace will flow for you that never flowed before, because he loves it when you talk that way. He loves it when you're deciding on the front end to give away whatever he's given you. I hope this helps you. Hope this encourages you. God bless you as you study. Amen.